So good evening again, everybody. And tonight, as you have already understood, I talk about John. And it sounds, and actually it is, an easy job to talk about John, about his life, his business life, his career, his private life. He has done a lot, he has achieved a lot during his life, both from personal and business point of view. And all in all, if I can summarize, he had, and still has, a remarkable private and business life. Thanks for giving me the pleasure and the honor to be your laudator. Thanks on behalf of all people within this room for making our association so successful and success proven, if needed, even by today's venue and today's Congress. You owe a lot to you, us, and the whole branch. Something on which we are all finally convinced. You definitely deserve the Lifetime Award. Thank you, John. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the 2022 Lifetime Award, John W. Herbert.
You still sound like a soul. My God, this reminds me of when we were young.
I say thank you. Thank you very much indeed, and it is quite an emotional moment when you see the way this has been done this evening, and my congratulations to the Edridge Inn and HEMA team for the support. I get a lot of compliments about what I've done, but it's also Ralph Ramada, Iñaki, and the team as well that's brought this here. I was going to make a long speech, but it's now all been said, nearly all been said, but I can say one or two things that I'd like to just get over. This honor that you're giving me this evening and the respect that you're showing me this evening is something very special to me. And it's something that when I started in retailing 67 years ago, I could never have believed it. But let me just tell you a little bit of the story behind that. Because when I was leaving school, first of all, as you heard, I was born in 1941. Our father left us when we were very young. It was an unstable childhood. And I left school at 15, or Easter Tuesday in 1956. But before I left, a careers officer came along, and he interviewed me and spoke, and he gave me a few tests. And he then said to me, "John, you're not very intelligent, but you've somehow a nice disposition. You're the perfect man for retailing." And all my life I've wondered, why are the suppliers also educated and the retailers not? That's the retailers, by the way. But anyway, I was very fortunate because I went to work for the York Co-op just before my 15th birthday. And I met a man called Johnny Appleton. He was the store manager. And he was a man who has perhaps helped me where I am today because he showed people a lot of respect and he really did everything he could for the customers. Nothing was too much for Johnny Appleton. And I've tried to follow his example all my life. I was telling my wife I was going to tell you a story, and she said, "Well, John, the second story you can tell, but the first one, please don't. But she's not here, so I'll tell you it. But let me tell you, you must first of all remember, so don't get shocked when I tell you. I'm talking now about 67 years ago. The world was different. So I went to this York Co-op store. We opened at 8 o'clock. We closed at 5:30, and we were closed for lunch for about an hour. Not for about, for 1 hour. And we had Johnny Appleton was a manager, and the deputy manager was called Norman Day. And Norman Day, he was a man, but he was a woman. But in those days, it wasn't allowed to be a woman if you were a man. You know what I mean? Life has changed. But then it was different. And then we had another lady, and then we had a girl called Maureen Dickinson. Now, she even put Marilyn Monroe in the shade. She was the best looking, nicest figure lady, about 24 years of age, and she was with us. And then, and this is what I shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you again, remember the year. And then we had lunch. And for all the older people in England, there was a pirate station called Radio Luxembourg, 208, medium wave, and they used to play pop music. So we went into the warehouse after, not every time, but it happened, and Norman Day used to play his music on his radio, the Radio Luxembourg. And then he used to dance with Maureen Dickinson. Now, she put his hand on his shoulders, but I'm not going to tell you where he put his hands. And they were giggling all the time, and everybody was. Now, could you imagine that happening today, what the media would do to you if you did that today? But in those days, we didn't think it. But we didn't have that social media filth, pornographic that you have today, that our children are subjected to. But it was a different time altogether. And the second story is, it was counter service. You stood behind the counter, can I have a pint of milk, John? You run about and you put it all there, and you added it up in your head. You didn't have any computer, and you then had 14, and give a little biscuit to Jimmy, and you cut a piece of cheese for the mother, and you took the money. And they were, in many ways, very, 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 very nice times. But then the regional manager came along, and he said, well, we're going to go to be self-service a little bit. And so we listened to it. So I went home that night, and I said to my mother, I said to her, yeah, we're going to go self-service. What? The two bloody idols are servers? They won't even serve us anymore. We have to pick it ourselves. And my father, stepfather, he started rolling about and said, oh, self-service will be bloody pinching everything. He said, oh, I've never heard anything so daft in all my life. So it just shows you about how things have changed. And so, but the other thing is, as we mentioned, I was there for 3 years, then I was in a discount store. I was a bit burnt out, but I earned a lot of money, and I was nearly 21, and I joined the army, and as I say, I came to Bielefeld. The very first weekend, it was in 31st of January, 1963, that I came to Germany. That weekend, there was a lot of snow, and I went skiing on the biggest hill, never skied in my life before, and had the most terrible accident, and I landed in hospital for almost 3 months. And that's the reason that I never did any duties. I was looking after the laundry and looking after the corporal's bar and the sergeant's bar and everything else. And so everything went, and so in the army, I'd been there, and what happened was that I started managing a small store. The NAFI stores, they had no competition, so they didn't have a very good reputation of being really excellent, brilliant stores. So I started managing a small store and ended managing a large chunk in Germany of the NAFI, and that was very, very good. And then I was posted to an island called Madeira off Oman, and I was to look after the island and all the supplies coming in and coming out. But then I decided that I would leave, and I would leave the army and go back. So I then applied to Sainsbury's for a job. This is a very interesting thing, because I wrote to Sainsbury's, I'm managing NAFI, a large area of Germany for the British forces. And they wrote back and said, sorry, we're very sorry to say you, but you haven't got any, we only take people for degrees, and we haven't got any vacancy. So I started in Germany. Shortly before, I managed a small store in Germany, in Paderborn. And then I heard there was a new hypermarket coming along called Continent, which was French-owned, Promodès in France, and the Sharper Group in Germany that later became the Metro. So I applied for the job and I got it. And I was there, and I was there for 2 years, and I was managing this hypermarket. I came out of the army, so within 2 years I joined the hypermarket, and I became the deputy director of the store. And I was going to get a new store. And then suddenly I saw an advert by Sainsbury's. And I said, gosh, they're looking for a director for their first store. Very, very high profile. And you know, it was a big piece of information in the Sunday Times. And I thought, oh, I'd love that job, and I think I could do it. But I haven't got a chance. If I send my application in to be a store manager, and 2 years later, going in at this very senior position, I simply haven't got a chance of my position. So I didn't apply. But 3 weeks later, I was in my office, and I pulled out the advert again. And I had a bit of time, and I rang up Sainsbury's. I said, my name is John Herbert. I am a hypermarket manager in Germany, and I see you're looking for new people. And I said, I applied for my job 3 weeks ago and I haven't heard anything. Oh, he said, wait a minute, I'll get our HR to ring you back. So the HR manager, who's a dear friend of mine still today, he rang me back. He said, Mr. Herbert, what are you doing? I said, I'm managing a hypermarket. Well, he said, well, we're hoping a hypermarket as well. This is what we're doing. So he said, you sent an application? I said, yes, when? He said, I said, 3 weeks ago. He said, oh, wait a minute, I'll have a look. I'll call you back. And he called me back and he said, Mr. Herbert, or John, as I say, I'm very sorry, but we've looked everywhere and we can't find your application. There's no wonder he couldn't find it, because I didn't send it off. So then he said, I'll come to Germany to see you because I'm going to be in Germany. It was a fib, of course. It wasn't going to be, but he was coming extra. This was on about the Tuesday. On Saturday he came. I happened to be the deputy director of the store, in charge of the store, because the director was away. He landed in Germany at 3 o'clock. The store's closed at 2 o'clock, and I showed him around my store, and he was very, very impressed. And then 2 weeks later, I got an interview, lunch rather, with Sir Roy Griffiths, the managing director of Sainsbury's, the largest food company in Europe at the time. And this was in this very short space of 2 years of time. Anyway, I thought, I hope he doesn't give me any soup, because my hands might be shaking if I have soup. But we had shrimps, so that was not too bad. And anyway, so I impressed, obviously, Sir Roy Griffiths. And a week later, I had an audience with his lordship, John Sainsbury, and I got the job there. Now, if that had been today's age, they would have said, send me an email, and I would never have heard anything more about it. So this was the wonderful opportunity I had by saying that, and Savour Centre was the most wonderful year of my life. I say year. We were married then. It was Sainsbury's with British Home Stores, a very reputable retailer in those days. 50-50 venture. There was a little politics going on. Then suddenly I got a call and said, John, would you like to be the managing director of Curry's subsidiary, Curry's Superstore division? Oh, and I said, yes, that would be very, very good. I think, so I went for many interviews and I got the job. So within a year, or within 3 years, I'd left the NAFI on a very low pay, and I was earning about 3 times as much 3 years later to go to be this superstore. So I went home and I said to my wife, well, that's it. We're going to go to London. I'm very pleased. And she said, I'm not going. I'm not going at all. I'm going back to Germany. She said, I never see you. All you're doing is work. And I could understand. So I had to make the decision, family or job. And I chose family. I chose it because of my... I chose it because of my experience with my father, and thought it wasn't going to happen to me. So I went back to Germany in 1979. I was so unhappy because it was different. The German people didn't know the decentralized system of the French like they did the Continent Supermarket. I was just a manager and told what to do, and it was a very, very difficult year. But I picked myself up, and within another 3 years, I was managing one of the largest hypermarkets altogether in Germany. And then I got a call, would I like to be the managing director of Knauber, a store with only 6 home center stores, but one was the biggest store in the whole of Germany at the time. And so I went there and I was at Knauber for 17 years. It was a family business, wonderful people, a lot of identity, a lot of integrity, long-term thinking, and I was very, very, very happy. Along came the American magazine, them, the Home Center News, and they made a big story about me, and they said, this is one of the world's best stores. In it, Hornbach was mentioned, Home Depot was mentioned, and Knauber was also mentioned in this booklet, which we were awarded. And then everybody came to see me, including Jim English, who's with us tonight, my dear friend who's written this brilliant book. And he came to see me with Bernie Marcus. And then I had Arthur Blank came to see me. And so everybody came to see me in this store in Knauber. And so, but I wanted to stay at Knauber. I was offered the Toys R Us Europe CEO. I turned everything down, stayed at Knauber, and it was a wonderful relationship with the owner. And, you know, that was almost, for me, very, 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 very important. But after 17 years, the daughter came in the business, and I realized the time was up. So there was a very big advert in the Generalanzeiger in the paper that John Herbert was going to retire by the family Knauber and all what I'd done, and that I was going into retirement. 2 weeks later, the same paper said John Herbert's going to America to be the president of the West Coast of America for the Home Depot. What a brilliant, I thought, wow, haven't I been lucky? So I went there and I got the job of this. So I went there and I was there for a year and I loved the Expo Design Center. Again, Jim English was the person who was behind this design center. To me, it was brilliant. Do it for me with the reputation of the Home Depot. I really embraced the business and all the ladies, the architects and everybody on doing the businesses, and it was very, very successful. And I was very, very happy there. And then all of a sudden I got a call and said, and I heard rumors I was going to be promoted. So I got the call, would I go to Atlanta? And then I went to Atlanta in the evening, there was a board meeting, and out came Mr. Nadelli, who was stated to be one of the worst CEOs ever. And I could only endorse that. Those clapping are Home Depot. Because Mr. Nadelli was a man who was talking about minimum pay, which never heard about it, bringing in soldiers, everything, a different man. He was not a retailer. But anyway, I was going to be promoted to the senior vice president responsible for the operations of the Expo Design Center, which I adored, which I loved and I thought was a brilliant. And so I went there and Bob Nadelli said to me, John, I'm delighted to tell you we're going to promote you to the senior vice president. This is promotion for you, and we'd like you to come next week from California to Atlanta. And then I was so happy for about 5 minutes, because then he told me who was going to be a president. And I knew the president, the new president. I knew there was going to be a new president. There was 3 people, candidates, and all 3 I got on well with. But the 4th came out, the hat that I had met, and I didn't like him at all. I didn't like his management style. No need to go into it today. So I said to Mr. Bob Nadelli, Bob, leave me in California. He stood up, angry. You don't want the job. Thank you very much. Get out. The next day, I got a letter saying I'd resigned from the Home Depot because I'd refused to work with the president. Bang. And I came back to Germany. I was quite down a little bit at the time. But then I was asked if I'd like to go to BHP. The BHP director had died. There was a new one. He was a bit new and young, and they thought that me being a little bit more older, I could help him. And so I went in 2002. And of course, then the idea to have EDRA was already there. It wasn't my idea that we were going to do it. But we founded it, I was co-founded that in EDRA in 2002, and 2004 I took over. And in all that time, as I've mentioned, I've traveled 440 journeys to every corner of the world, to every home center, and a lot of people in this room here I've personally, whether it's New Zealand or Australia or Peru or South Africa or whatever it's been, Siberia, Russia, Europe, I've been to all these stores, and it's been a wonderful experience. I feel very honored and very privileged that I've had the opportunity of helping to build this Edridge. When I see it tonight, I really feel very proud and very humble. And I think the way that you have responded me to be this evening is very good. I'm almost getting, yeah. I've recovered, so thank you very much indeed. And again, we've come here, 217 members. I'm pleased to say that following this Congress, 2 companies have told me they're going to join, so we're going up to 219, and so it goes on. So thank you very much indeed, and for this lovely, warm welcome. And yeah, thanks a lot. Thank you.